right. Welcome everyone. My name is Miles Viecher. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director of Pre-Orientation and Operations in New Student and Family Programs at American University. We are very delighted that you are here to join us as we talk a little bit about supporting your student in the job and internship search. Tonight, I have Andrea Carpenter, who is the assistant dean who's an assistant dean in Kogod School of Business, Brian Rowe, director of experiential education in the AU Career Center, and we may be joined by another colleague who works in the School of International Service. Without further ado, I am going to pass it off to Andrea.
Thanks, Miles, and welcome everyone. Brian and I are so thrilled to have an opportunity to speak with you tonight. Thank you also for those of you who sent some questions ahead. We really look forward to answering those. So we'll go through some slides and some information, but we'll also make sure that we're saving some time for questions, both the questions you've sent in and then also questions at the end. So as Miles shared, Brian works with the Central Career Center. I work in the School of Business, and our colleague David is over in the School of International Service. And really what we hope we convey to you tonight is that there are abundant resources at American University to support your students. And, so Brian and his team at the Central Career Center are an amazing full service career center. In the business school, we have some business specific resources and business specific career center. And then our colleague David over in the School of International Service also supports School of International Service students, but we work very closely together. And we have a very collaborative environment here at AU. Brian, is there anything else that you want to share there about how our offices support students?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. So again, welcome everyone. We're very glad that you've joined us tonight, and we're um, going to have a basically a brief conversation or a presentation, and then we'd like to have a longer conversation too. We're happy to answer your questions. Having three career centers that works, with students, it's like that's a lot. That's a great indicator that experiential learning, that career development, that career resources and professional development are important to American University. My office, as Andrea said, and thank you, Andrea. I don't think of us as the main. I just think of us as maybe the
Neutral.
big one, right? But
Neutral.
so the AU Career Center works with all students from the School of Public Affairs, the College of Arts and Sciences, School of Education, School of Communication, and we also work with first and second year students, first and second year undergraduate students from the School of International Service. As Andrea mentioned, Andrea's center works with all students from Kogod School of Business. And then David, who he's indicated he's logging in, Miles. So if you can just be on the lookout for David Fletcher. David Fletcher's office in the School of International Service focuses on juniors, seniors, and graduate students. So, and I want to echo what Andrea said. I don't think I've ever worked at a university where, we've having multiple career centers. It happens sometimes depending on the size of the university. I've never worked in a university where the offices worked really so well together. So we share resources. If one of Andrea's students would benefit from meeting with one of the career advisors in my office, we can make that happen, vice versa. And again, there's just quite a lot of collaboration going on. We share resources, we assist each other. So that's a very collegial, if you will, relationship that we have. So, shall we go into sort of talking about resources, Andrea? So, um, just to give an example, these are the student-facing staff in our offices. So our offices actually have more people than this in them, but these are the folks that are focused on student appointments. Your students will see them in presentations. if you go to our websites, and we'll have those links at the end, you'll see a whole semester's worth of workshops that your students can sign up for. We love it when families take a look at that and maybe make a helpful suggestion, right? I mean, the students have a lot going on here. If you know that your student has a real interest in something and one of our offices has a workshop on it, please feel free to help promote that with them. But you'll see all of those resources. You'll see networking events. You'll see job and internship fairs. You'll see employer visits, employer information sessions. And then we even have, for instance, drop-in consulting in our offices for quick questions. We have scheduled appointments. We run quite a range, but you'll see these are the career advisors. These are the career coaches, and Andrea Shop calls them career coaches. These are the folks that your students will meet with. And then we have others that work on employer development, employer relations, and other, kinds of support functions within our offices as well. Hello, David.
Hello, great to meet you all. Hold on.
For those of you not in the eastern half of the country, we're having a interesting time with ice and snow that just seems to never go away. So, David, I hope you made it okay to wherever you're joining us from right now. So,
Commute wasn't bad. It was the login was
oh, okay.
15, 20-minute endeavor. So if I seem a little frazzled, I'm in good spirits. Great to see
No
everyone.
worries.
Thank you.
No worries, David. We told everyone about the good work your office is doing with SAS students, juniors to grad. So, all right. So we've got the student staff here. Let's take a look. What would be really helpful for us is for you to have a good sense of sort of what career centers do, how they help. We are resources, right? We are the humans that work in our office are resources, advisors, trained and experienced, often with specialized training. And then we also pull in electronic resources. We're connected with employers. So we want to do a little bit on sort of what we do. And then honestly, there are other offices that sometimes are confused with the Career Center. We'll just really quickly take a look at that too. So I've mentioned a few times now career advising. These are the types of meetings that your students are going to have with career advisors, right? I know many students, they're in what I call an exploration phase. So they may have decided on a major and they're very interested in that major. And then the question becomes sort of moving forward into the future, how does that major that has captured my interest, how does that interface with careers, right? And that's a conversation that career advisors can have. If your students have any kind of hesitation, like, oh, I feel like I don't have everything just perfect, so I don't want to go to the Career Center, we want you to come in at whatever phase you are if you're a student. If you have no idea and you need help exploring and clarifying, we're here for you. If you have sort of an idea and you want more information about that field, or to talk it through, right? We're here for you. If you've got really firm plans and you just want to clarify, timelines, we're absolutely here for you. And if you're that last group and then all of a sudden you change your mind, which happens a lot when you're at university, we're here to help as well. So no problem, but all of that. But never hesitate to have your student come meet with us, to attend a workshop, even just to look at our website and our resources. Like, it's all there for you. Again, I mentioned these events, right? So we're constantly, and you'll go to our websites, you'll see the big events that we're having. Employers coming to campus, for instance, career educational programming. You'll find us in the students' classes too. Faculty will have us in to address a specific topic as it relates to that specific class or that specific degree. So they'll see us there as well. And again, I mentioned the online resources. Two that we'll talk a little bit more about. Well, one that we'll really talk a little bit more about is Handshake, which is that platform where your student can schedule a student advising appointment. There's another website that Andrea will tell you about that the business school uses quite a lot as well. Very similar, but that's that platform where lots of resources are stored, appointments can be made, things can be signed up for as well. other offices, and these are offices we actually work really closely with. So there's a lot of communication back and forth. But sometimes a student will come to me and say, "Hey, what do I have to do to declare this major?" And I'm not the specialist, in that area. So I'm going to refer a student back to their academic advisor, not, we're the career advising side of things. But that's an office, again, there's quite a lot of communication. For instance, someone on the call tonight wanted some more information about internships for credit, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But there is a good communication between academic advising and our career offices. We have international students at AU. They are students. We are happy to work with them because of their visa status. There are some additional steps they would have to take, for instance, to intern. We have a companion office in ISSS, and they're the experts and specialists. So we are very happy to work with and meet with international students. And then we just want to make sure that all those specific situations and conditions have been met, and our colleagues in ISSS are those folks. And then AU abroad. And I do want to say that my office, the AU Career Center, and AU abroad are merging. So the university has seen the synergy between the career function and the international, study abroad function. There are many opportunities to intern abroad, and those are very strongly supported. So if you're going to Brussels, we have a team. AU has a team in Brussels that are connecting, like literally setting up interviews for you, for that very specific time that you're in Brussels. Same thing in Nairobi and also in Madrid. And then there are actually many, many other options where internships abroad are a piece. So there's quite a lot of interaction and support between our two offices. We do that really well. So, um, would one of you, I've spoken a lot. Would one of you like to talk about experiential learning at AU?
Sure.
Okay.
So I've been thinking about experiential learning a lot, especially recently, because as Brian mentioned, we go into classes. Several of us also teach classes. And one of the classes that I am currently teaching, business professionalism in career readiness, this week we are talking all about how to do an industry job search. And one of the things that we're talking through this week is what are employers looking for, right? And NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, recently sent out information about basically what is the landscape looking like for entry-level hiring, right? For folks who are going to be graduating from college and looking for a job. And one of the big things that came across is that employers, year over year, this happens, right? So it's no surprise, but one of the big things that employers are looking for is students who have experiential learning, students who are able to demonstrate skills because they have practiced them. They have had opportunities to both build and apply those skills. And so we have a little bit of a quiz here for you about what is experiential learning, right? Is it learning that takes place in a lab? Skills you develop participating in clubs, internships, academic related activities, or all of the above? We would love to see if folks are willing to put in the chat what you think. All right, I am going to go ahead and give the answer that those of you who said all of the above are correct, right? So experiential learning, absolutely. Students who are participating in labs, students who are participating in clubs, which can be a great way to also demonstrate teamwork and leadership, right? Internships. We love internships because, again, it's giving students experience in a professional work environment. Many academic related activities. We talk about curricular and co-curricular learning. These are all great opportunities. And again, the value for employers, what we hear from employers is we love AU students because we know that students do internships and students do experiential learning. And so we know that students have both built and practiced these skills that they're going to be able to take with them into the workplace. So again, as Brian mentioned, we have so many resources on campus. We have a plethora of opportunities for students to be able to participate in experiential learning.
Yeah, and if I can, so this is one of my primary areas within the AU Career Center, my title, right? Experiential education. Um, this, if a student is a first year student and they say, outside of a very specific program called Cornerstone, right? If they say, should I intern, if I'm here for 4 years, should I intern my first year? Should I feel that pressure to kind of like, dash off campus as soon as possible? And my usual advice is no, don't feel that pressure. There are other types of experiential learning. And I believe my two colleagues also agree with me. There are other types of experiential learning where you sort of build up, right? So there are opportunities on campus that can be part-time jobs, that can be student clubs and organizations, right? You're get sometimes the beginning research opportunities with faculty. There are these volunteerism. I mean, there are so many ways to do that and then build up. Then it all builds, right? So that looks really great on your resume. The employer is looking for interns. Acknowledge that they see this activity. You've met with your career advisor. Your resume is projecting relevant skills. You've been trained by your career advisor and advised by your career coach to, like determine, okay, look at what it's saying in the internship description, right? This is what I need to emphasize in my documents, in my resume, my cover letter. So, they're being coached on that, they're being advised on that. And then that sort of moves forward, right, through into internships. DC is a very internship heavy city, right? It's part of the culture, the professional work culture in DC. And AU is really well represented, right, within that. So, and that can be, we're often the number one supplier, if you will, of interns for Capitol Hill. We're definitely in the top five or usually in the top three, but the last few times they've done that survey, we were the top, right? But, there are plenty of examples through business, through nonprofits, larger think tanks. I mean, it's sort of fascinating. And I've been at AU for over 12 years now, and still students will come in and say, I've got this internship, or I'm looking at their resume. They come in for a refining of their resume for the next step. And I'm like, these are incredible experiences, right? So that's still absolutely happening, and it's absolutely part of the culture at AU. So, all right, I'm going to take us to the next slide. Handshake. David, can you talk to us about the wonders of Handshake?
I sure can. So Handshake is the job and resource platform, internship platform, event platform that all students get a profile on as they become students at American University. At the undergraduate level, at the graduate level, they are provided with a profile on Handshake, which they're asked to fill out and put some additional information on it, maybe a profile picture, certainly more information about their background. And with that, they're able to apply for opportunities directly through the platform. They can load their resume, they can load cover letters, they can have all kinds of information available. And employers can even look at them through Handshake without the student having to apply. So it is a great resource. In addition to internships and jobs, it posts resources like InterStride if students are looking for opportunities abroad. Big Interview, which is an interview platform that students can use on their own to practice interview skills. It has lots of other resources as well. Alumni Fire, which is a great networking tool. So these are things made available to students, and they can continue using Handshake even after graduation. All they have to do is update their new email when they no longer have a student email or are no longer using it. And they can continue using this platform, again, for job search and applications, for applying for opportunities. Almost all of our career events are listed here. I know the job fair, which is coming up in March, is already posted. The Kogod Career Expo, which is coming up just in 2 weeks, is posted. So there are lots of opportunities for students to build their career by using this platform. We highly recommend this as one of the first stops they should make on their journey.
The when a student comes in, usually in July, so before their first semester, basically, if they're coming in the fall, right? Before their first semester, usually kind of late July, the handshake profiles have been created. The student gets an email saying, your kind of bare bones basic profile has been created. It's linked to AU in Handshake. And that's why we do that, right? If you go to handshake.com and create a profile, it's not associated with AU. That actually gets really complicated. So please don't do that. If you're like, whoops, I didn't get that email or haven't found it or I lost it amongst all the other emails we get, no problem. You can contact my office. Again, you'll see the contact information and we'll just kind of send out something that will resend that email to you. But everybody's profile is created basically, late July, right before they come, or like January if they're coming in the spring term. So your profile exists. It's just kind of linking up if you haven't accessed it yet. So
And Brian, could you give our families an idea of how many employers post or how many opportunities are on Handshake at any given time?
the number sounds ridiculous. It's many thousands and thousands of employers. So this is a national platform, right? Actually, even international, I believe. There are schools overseas that use it as well. So, at any one time, there may be, you know, 9,000 internships. Now, of course, not every internship is going to be the right internship for your student, right? So, but this is a very active platform. Employers who are looking for either current students for internships, or they're looking for new graduates, right? That's the kind of entry level jobs they have, for instance. They know this is one of the primary platforms to access student talent, right? So, this is the platform, employers in San Francisco, employers in Houston, Chicago, Miami, Boston, New York are using this platform as well because many of the universities in those locations also use Handshake. It's one of the national leaders in that. But in addition to Handshake, Andrea, if you'd like to talk about, your platform that for business students.
Absolutely. So Handshake is phenomenal. I love that our business students also have access to it. And we also in the business school have an additional resource that is a little bit more specifically tailored to business opportunities called the Kogod Talent Network. And that is available to business majors and minors. As David mentioned, though, we still post our major events in Handshake as well because we welcome all students to attend. But some of the specific things that we do, like business specific treks, for example, those would be posted in Kogod Talent Network. And again, as Brian has mentioned, when students are coming in for a career coaching appointment with us, we're showing them how to use these resources, how to set up their profile, how to make sure that they're making the best use out of these. There are a lot of capabilities in these platforms that can help suggest, hey, you've mentioned you're interested in this. This could be a good internship opportunity for you. And so we can help, again, students make sure that they're maximizing those resources. So yes, Handshake, Kogod Talent Network, two fantastic resources that students have access to.
Handshake has an app, right? So the students can use the app. Once their profile is complete, like Andrea said, it's going to, the algorithm's going to start showing them things that are, based on their stated interests. So the more complete a profile, the more sort of accurate that will be. So it's very recommended that a student really kind of engages and completes that profile. I'm sure the talent network is also the same when it comes to
And
that.
then one thing that I will mention is, the same way that many AU students will use Handshake to schedule their appointments, Similarly, business students will use Kogod Talent Network for those scheduling purposes as well.
Today's takeaways. So we have three, right? So how the offices support you, how they support your student. Again, we are a center of resources. We have humans trained and experienced in helping students sort of find their path, launch onto their path, and then we constantly are collecting resources that are, concentrating internships, concentrating jobs through platforms like Handshake and the Kogod Talent Network. Again, sort of one-stop shops where they can schedule appointments with us, they can RSVP for events, they get reminders, right? It's all the good parts of that. And then we store electronic resources on those sites. And then again, the importance of experiential learning, right? So it's always great to graduate with a great degree, strong academics, and then you have this wonderful sort of fusion of the strong academics and then the experience that you've had sort of developing skills that employers are interested in. So, and then you can access our three websites using these QR codes. So please feel free. Again, if a parent ever has a question, they can contact me in the AU Career Center. I'm sure Andrea and David also will serve as resources in their office. We, welcome again inquiries, and we want to work with you. We're thrilled if you're sort of emphasizing one of our resources to your students because that really helps us. So I'm going to leave this up, just so if people want to grab those websites. But shall we open it up to questions? And why don't we start, Miles? We have some questions. Because I'm sharing my screen, it's a little trickier for me to look. But Andrea, do you have access to the questions that were submitted previously?
Yes. So thank you again, those of you who submitted some questions ahead of time. One of the first questions that came through is how difficult is it to get an internship that also counts for class credit? Can you explain the process of obtaining an internship that also counts for class credit?
Right. I can take this one and feel free, obviously. I think we all have experience with this. So every academic department at AU has the potential to host internships for credit, right? So the internship for credit is a class. The student is signing up for an academic class depending on the school, right? So Kogod may run them a little different than SIS, which will run them a little different than the College of Arts and Sciences. But it is an academic class. You're working with a faculty member. There's a syllabus for that internship for credit. The student basically locates an internship through our office, for instance, through their networks, however, and then works with their academic advisor to make sure that the internship sort of satisfies the requirements. And sometimes the faculty member is very involved in that. Sometimes, the academic advisor takes a lead on that, depends on the department. But a good place to start, I think, is your academic advisor and say, here's what I'm interested in, an internship for credit. I'll tell you a really kind of a universal rule at AU with internships for credit as a requirement. They can be no more than 15% sort of admin clerical, right? So if it's something that's called an internship and they're, watering plants and they're, grabbing coffee for the boss, and, if that's the stated nature of the internship, it's not going to receive credit, right? So they're looking for sort of project-based substantial work where the student's utilizing critical thinking skills, utilizing communication skills, organization skills, learning. The employer is also providing information. An ideal internship, the employer is sacrificing a bit of their time and energy to help the student learn. That is that is really an internship. So, that's a core. There are certain hour requirements. So students can get they can get 1 credit for an internship, and there's a, lower number of hours up through 6, right? So there is kind of range. I would say the most I see are 3 credits or 2 credits. That's usually the range of academic credits. But it's a class with a faculty member. They're meeting with that faculty member. I like to think of the internship as the lab. Sometimes a course will have, a seminar component where you're meeting with the faculty and sometimes other students, sometimes a small group of students. And then, your kind of lab experience is out at the internship for a certain number of hours each week. But a good place to start, talk to a career advisor, orient to the resources that we have to find these internships, talk to the academic advisor and say, sort of, what's my timeline? But if you're looking for the fall, right? So when registration for fall classes opens up, that does include also, internships through the drop ad period. So, understanding that sometimes a fall internship might be secured the last week of August or the second week of August, through maybe even the first week of September. There is time to add those internships for credit. David, Andrea, anything to add to that?
Not to that. Oh, go ahead, David.
Oh, I was going to say that internships for credit are offered in the summer, fall, and spring. It is maybe more fiscally sound to do it in the fall and spring when a student could wrap those credits inside of their 17 credit limit. If taken in the summer, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 6 credits are paid for out of pocket because there is no summer tuition. So keep that in mind that a summer internship for credit may be a great way for a student to move through some of their required credits for their degree, but they will be additional costs, whereas in the fall and spring, they could be absorbed as regular tuition if the number of credits do fall under those 17 credit limits.
That's a great point. I also want to add that the majority of internship engagement is not for credit, right? Um, it kind of depending on the student, right? Sometimes, and there are very few academic programs on campus where it's usually a requirement, or you either do this class or this internship for credit, right? It's usually there's a bit of an option, but for the vast majority of academic majors, it is an option. Some students like it, you know what I mean? Like they like that sort of engagement with the faculty member and the internship, but don't feel like, oh, the only way I can do an internship is for credit. Unless you're an international student, then that's usually the case where you need to receive academic credit for it. So,
And an internship can be paid and also
mhm.
taken for credit. They're
Yes,
not exclusive. So don't worry that your student gets a paid internship. Oh my goodness, can they register it for the course credit? Yes, they can.
that's right. Absolutely. Stated right in the academic regulations. No problem.
Wonderful. Okay, so we do have a few more questions that have been provided and also questions that are coming in through the Q&A function. Thank you, thank you. So the second question that came in, can the Career Center also be useful for getting summer jobs in the DC area? Not necessarily jobs that relate to a major, but jobs to get work experience and earn some money.
Yeah, we sure can. Now I would also, if I'm working with a student, for instance, I want the student to be open to both. I would say there's even more paid internships in the summer than there are in the fall and the spring. But yes, if there's a specific reason they would rather do, a part-time job, there's skills to be had, absolutely, in what's not something not called an internship, right? Called a part-time job. Definitely transferable skills developed there. Yes. So our platform handshake is really focused on internships and then jobs, right? So full-time jobs. But there are other resources. And then, the career advisor is going to sit down. One of the first questions a career advisor will ask the student. So the student gets to kind of indicate what they want to meet about, right? So in when they create the appointment on our platforms, the better that kind of prompt, if you will. Sometimes I see a prompt and the student's been pretty specific. It gives me a little time to maybe research something beforehand, right? That's what's nice about a nice, thorough appointment prompt. But then when we sit down, it's okay, what would you like to cover today? What is the goal for today? What do you want to take away when we're done in this 30 minutes or 60 minutes, right? So, um, and if it's like looking to make a lot of money this summer, here's my goal, then absolutely we can sit down and kind of take a look at local resources, for instance. So, so much of what we do is teaching your student how we want them to graduate and be able to do it independently, right? And say, I know how to find jobs. I know how to network in an industry of my interest. I'm aware of sort of the options and opportunities there. I know what a strong resume looks like, even if, an alumni can come back and get us to take a look at those things or get some advice from us, right? But, we would want them to feel really kind of empowered to make these professional moves themselves. But again, we are there to support even after they graduate. So, yeah.
And then the last pre-submitted questions before we move on to the questions in the Q&A feature is, how does a student first reach out to the Career Center to get help with starting a search for an internship? What is the process?
David, go ahead. I don't want to, I want you all to talk as
Let
well.
me
I
jump
get
in.
too excited and I want to answer all the questions, and I shouldn't do that. So
So
sorry.
for students in most of the schools, Kogod, SPA, CAS, School of Communication, School of Education, they would go through either the Kogod network or through Handshake to look up their advisor and to schedule an appointment with them. There are also drop-in hours for each of the schools. And for SIS, we've moved to an almost exclusive drop-in model where students would not use Handshake to schedule an appointment. They would either look for us in the atrium 4 days a week or go online the other 4 days a week. So we're there Monday through Friday with available drop-in advising, and we do some special reserve times. But students should first look to make an appointment or come to drop-in advising to see their advisor. Then once meeting with them, be prepared to discuss what are they looking for? What is their purpose with their internship? What are the resources available? Not just on Handshake, but what about on Idealist or Indeed or
Mhm.
Glassdoor or LinkedIn?
Interstride. Right, right, right.
Interstride. So there are lots of ways to find these. We can help them with that search. We can walk through the process. You should cast a wide net. If you're just applying to the World Bank, the UN, Department of State, and the CIA, it may be very tough for your first internship if it is one of those premier organizations. So casting a wide net, it also helps to talk to alumni that may be working at those organizations. We really do discuss networking as a strong way of securing opportunities, and then making sure they're following instructions when they are applying for opportunities. They may need to send a resume or a CV. They may be asked to send in a cover letter, a transcript, references, a writing sample. So they need to follow instructions because not submitting some of those materials will get them eliminated. So many students need to come in and talk about the process, being organized, going through this as a step-by-step procedure, not being overwhelmed by it, by, oh, the enormity of it, but actually doing this one step at a time. How to get started, how to do the search and the identification, then how to do the actual applications. And then also we prep for interviews and help them with every step.
Great. Moving on to some other questions. We have a question related to SIS 2025 graduates, recognizing
Sure.
some of those challenges. And so the question says, hi, would it be possible to share how SIS 2025 graduates fared in finding their first job with all the reductions in the government and agencies, and any guidance and learnings for upcoming 2026 SIS graduates?
Sure. So 2026 graduates will be getting the same guidance that we gave to 2025 graduates. The federal government has been exerting a reduction process in hiring, mostly the executive branch. The military hasn't been effective. The legislative branch hasn't been effective. The judicial branch has not been affected. But the executive branch has been reducing the size of the federal workforce. That impact has been felt most significantly in the DMV, also stands for the District, Maryland, and Virginia, the Washington, D.C. region, where the vast majority of these federal employees had been working. So it is a crowded marketplace. We are advising students from 2025 and 2026 to cast a wide net, to look at opportunities in their home state. They may have to put their international ambition on hold for just a bit and look at a state opportunity to work on environmental issues, to work on immigration and human rights issues in Florida, in Texas, in California. But there are still opportunities with international relations employers, think tanks, nonprofits, law firms, again, state and local government, if not so much federal government, private sector. And so we have been helping them to really think outside the box, to not put their career on hold, but just a temporary glitch that it may take 2, 3, 4 more years. Maybe when the federal government comes back around to wanting to do international development and aid abroad, we may see a resurgence in some of these, more funding for certain think tanks and nonprofits, international type programs. But there still has been hiring. That has not stopped. It has just meant a pivot in many cases. And so we've been helping students to get employment and alumni that have been impacted. So that has been a focus of ours over the past 12 months, helping those that have been reduced in force and they have been able to make a pivot and find opportunities.
And I see a similar question in terms of with the government job cuts, how are you able to support students who are looking for jobs in that area? I know that we've done a lot of coaching and provided resources for students who are looking to make transitions out of government or to different areas of government. But Brian, David, any additional thoughts there?
Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, I work quite a lot with the School of Public Affairs, right? So, those are students that are interested in public service, in government jobs. If you there's a website if you want to take a look at sort of data on the last three graduating classes. Now, this doesn't yet include 2025. Takes the sort of the statisticians on campus a little while to sort of crunch the data. That will be coming online soon for the 2025 grads. But we know success right now, I think, was showing 2024, 2023, 2022 graduating classes. So it's an aggregate of that. So if we know success, KNOW, we know success, American University, you can look by academic program, right? To see both grad and undergrad, sort of the hiring there. It also shows sort of like where the sector the students work in. So even in the School of Public Affairs, would you think, oh, they all must go to government? Of the three sectors, right? The private sector, the nonprofit sector, and the public sector, government. Government is the lowest. That's a snapshot 6 months after graduation. That data is a snapshot. So if it took someone 6 months and 2 days, they're not even included in those very healthy numbers, right? Take a look at those. They're still very strong. But the government sector was always the lowest for the School of Public Affairs. Part of that is it can take a little while to get a government job, right? Or you work in a nonprofit, a type of issue area nonprofit, for instance, building your skills, and then you transition to a government job, which can take a while. Their hiring process is, I'd say, the slowest of the three sectors, right? So, but for students who are like, my long-term goal is to work in the federal government, and right now that's not, feasible, right? We have been taking a look at state governments. We have been taking a look at county governments, city governments. There are these opportunities, right? If a student enjoys that type of environment, they want that kind of work where they're sort of working for the good of the community in a sense, right? The structure of a community. So we have pivoted to those opportunities as well. And then just as David was saying, you take a little bit of a longer view. Some students, when they're getting ready to graduate, they think, oh, the job I'm going to get after I graduate from here is kind of like my forever job. Folks on the call, right? If you've been working 10, 20, 30 years, you know that sort of now especially it's rather difficult to stay in the same job in the same career area. You move, things change, new career areas develop, your interests change, your requirements change, right? Your location might change, and so you're making different choices. So again, you will hear our three offices, you will hear the three of us talking a lot about with your students about skills, right? Skills and competencies. And we're not just sort of pulling them out of thin air. We belong to these national associations that also include employers. They tend to be like larger size employers, and we're querying their recruiters, they're being surveyed like, what are the skills? If you have someone coming right out of school, what is the ideal candidate looking like, right? What skills are they possessing? And so we know the skills, right? The top skills that they're looking for. We're sharing those with your students. They're on our websites, we're not hiding that at all. So it can be that sort of, okay, what's the long-term goal? Let's also talk about like midpoint milestones. And then how about the short term, like that transition right out, that first destination after you graduate, right? So we'll strategize with your student about that. So.
We have another great question. I noticed you support grad school applications. Do you have advice or practice for grad school interviews? And so I can start off with this one.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Our offices fully support students as they are applying for grad school. And one of the things that we really encourage students to do is first just think about the timing, right? Think about the timing of when you want to be completing that degree, because depending on whether you're getting a specialty master's or, for example, an MBA, there can be a difference in terms of how much work experience a graduate school is looking for, and also just when it's most beneficial for you career-wise, right? But certainly, whether a student is applying to grad school here at American University, which we love when students are continuing on here, or elsewhere, we support that. And similar to how we support students in preparing for a job interview, we're helping students think through their fit, right? How are you going to be a successful candidate? A grad school also wants to see you be successful. They want to know that you're going to be able to persist through the program academically. They want to know that you are going to be able to secure a job at the end of that program, right? Often for a lot of grad schools, they're looking at, have the students, especially if they have work experience prior to the program, are they then getting a job that is increasing in salary, right? These are how a lot of grad schools and academic programs are judged. And so we're really helping students think through, why is this the best next step for you? How does this make sense within your career journey and your career goals? How are you going to be taking advantage of the opportunities during grad school? And how can you talk about that in that grad school interview? How can you show that you're going to be an engaged member of the community? And then certainly helping them make sense of their academic journey so far. Again, how this program is going to fit in, and um, it's really just such a wonderful privilege to be able to help students along that process. So again, some similarities to how we prep students for interviews for a job or interviews for an internship, but also really looking at, again, an academic institution and that program. What are they looking for? And how can we make sure that students are best representing themselves?
And if I can add too to that, you know, graduate programs also often, and they frequently are career enhancing, right? Andrea mentioned an MBA. There are different graduate programs that sort of lead into certain career areas, right? That are provide an advantage in certain career areas. We're going to talk about that as part of that strategy, right? So, sometimes I get a student who says, I want to go to grad school right after I graduate from AU. And I said, okay, so what's the plan? And they might be like, I don't know what else to do. And I'm like, okay, that maybe isn't the best reason to go to grad school, right? Because you're kind of kicking that can down the road a little bit, right? where you're going to have to make those decisions. We want that graduate program to fit into your life's course, right? Like what is the plan for that degree? In addition to sort of the grad school as we think of, our offices also, my office especially, prepares students um, um, in pre-law. Like, so we're assisting with students who want to go to law school, right? And that can be immediately after, right? That's one where you see a lot, not even half, but a large percentage of students go right after undergrad, or a few years later, they still have access to pre-law advising. So we have a specialist advisor in my office who, that is her, she is just phenomenal at that, is helping students kind of prepare for that. And that's reviewing personal statements. It's strategizing, here's my LSAT score, or here's my GPA. Okay, let's look at law school median scores and what's going on. This year, law school saw this huge surge in applications, right? And they did last year too. Sort of this upward trend. Usually it kind of does up and down, but we seem to be like kind of 3 years it's been increasing. So what is the best strategy based on, your scores, your, timeline, your goal, and also we do have both in the academics for pre-med as well as we have a career advisor who kind of helps prep for med school interviews. So graduate school, law school, pre-med, we've got resources and assistance.
And that's a great tie-in because I saw there had been a question about resources available for students considering law school. So I don't know, Brian, if
Right.
there's anything else that you want to say specific about law
Yeah.
school prep. And I also saw, I know I'm monitoring the questions here. I see there's a question related to Coverdell. So I'm going to look to David to see if you don't mind typing a response for that in case we don't have a chance to answer live. But Brian, back to you about law school.
Sure. So sometimes students very early in their undergraduate career, and occasionally grad students also want to, go on from there to law school. But um, sometimes we have freshmen who are like, I want to explore this, right? I want to go to law school, or I'm pretty sure I want to go to law school, or maybe I want to go to law school. Any career advisor in my office can sit down and have that kind of conversation. If I have any lawyers on the call, you can imagine there are some sort of sometimes not accurate perceptions of law careers, the law school process, right? So we want to make sure people have the right information, the correct information to consider, right, as it relates to their personal goals. So, and then when you hit your junior year, like basically the summer after your sophomore year, you have access in my office to a specialist appointment called pre-law advising. So before then, any career advisor can walk you through and sort of maybe demystify that process a bit, help you think that through. If law school remains an interest, as soon as your sophomore year comes to an end, you're going to have access to meet with our pre-law advisor, and she is going to sit down and talk timelines. When do you want to be in law school? Is it right after? Okay. Is it 2 years after you graduate? Okay, let's talk timeline. Here's information on the website that everybody uses for law school applications. The students use it, the law schools use it. We sort of orient them to that, right? There are options for law school prep, right? We don't favor one over the other, but we make it known that there are these options, for instance. So yeah, that again, some students come in very curious or even rather determined, right, as first year students that law school is in their future. We're happy to. We're pretty savvy about that. Many AU students want to go to law school. So, and then they're going to work pretty closely with the pre-law advisor, Tammy, about, okay, personal statements, when the best timeline we want to strategize with, when is the best moment in the cycle to submit your applications, right? So, yeah, we do quite a lot of that.
Fantastic. And I know that David is responding to a question in the chat, and then we have another question which is great. It says, my son is looking for something a bit unusual, an internship in emergency preparedness, disaster management, ideally in the Bay Area in California. He hasn't found anything on Handshake or other websites and might need some networking help. Any ideas? He already is an EMT, lots of experience, and is a junior. And first, can I just say I love that your go-to is he might need help with networking, because networking,
Yep.
especially for some niche fields or opportunities, is such a smart strategy.
Right.
So Brian, anything else that you want to share there?
Yeah. So if a student came to me with an interest like that, and again, it helps in a way kind of narrowing it down like that to the Bay Area, for instance. Um, your point about networking is spot on. So David mentioned this website that we have access to called Alumni Fire, like the two words together, Alumni Fire. Alumni Fire is a portal that different universities will have an instance of. So AU has it. I think there are over 8,000 alumni on there. And now, a lot of those alums might be, looking to speak to each other about sort of connecting and learning. That's one resource where I'd say, let's look for people doing that kind of work in the Bay Area, right? Um, Maybe even, and let's say that becomes challenging. All right, let's look at DC just to learn more about the field, right? So the beauty of doing something, and all three of us will talk to students about something called informational interviewing. And that's where you sit down with somebody, maybe for a half hour, 45 minutes, maybe they've got an hour for you. Maybe it's, kind of online like this. Maybe it's in person over a cup of coffee or tea. Um, but it's sort of, hey, I found you through the alumni networks, for instance, or maybe through my personal network or my roommates network. They're all interconnected, right? But you're doing some work that I find really interesting and fascinating. And, I kind of, in a way, you're saying like, I might want to be you someday. Can you give me some advice? So the person being interviewed in this case, the expert, right, doesn't need to do much to prepare for that. They are going to sit down, maybe give some advice, maybe talk about trends in the field, in the industry. We're helping the students prepare for those. Here are some good questions to ask. This is your moment, right, to talk to someone in the field, and what is their advice for someone coming up? Maybe it's learning a certain kind of software. Maybe it's having a certain kind of experience between now and then, which gives you that time to adapt and to pivot, right? So we will talk quite a lot about informational interviews. And even if it's, I want to be in the Bay Area, maybe if we can connect someone with them here in DC, how networks work. It might be like, oh, my roommate from that grad program now works in, San Francisco, right? So there are those, that's another benefit of informational interviewing is learning very strategic and current information about a field. And then also, you're now a real live breathing human being to that person and not just a resume or an email, right? So, but yeah, I'd also kind of like to narrow it down, like emergency preparedness. We've got, cities will have their version of FEMA, for instance. So I don't know if they want to do like on the ground direct response, if they'd like to look at policy, if they like to look at kind of management, project management, or program management of those programs. And honestly, maybe they all want a taste of all of that, and that's certainly possible. So yeah, I'd have them schedule with their career advisor. So they go to Handshake, unless if they're Kogod, they go to the Kogod Talent Network. And in that prompt, be that specific because oftentimes the advisor then has, some time before the appointment, especially if it's more than like 24 or 48 hours in advance, right? That they can do a little digging too. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I know that we are just at about time. I think that we have answered the questions in that have come in through the queue, but I do want to echo what Brian said before that please don't hesitate to reach out to any of our offices if you have any additional questions. We love partnering with students and we love partnering with parents. again, just recently I was talking to parents and we were talking to students rather, and we were talking about how have you thought about your career and how have you made career decisions? And so much of it has been influenced by you, by their parents, by their
Mhm.
friends, by their family. And so we appreciate all that you do to partner in helping your students with career success. Um, so with that, Brian, David, any last thoughts before we turn it back over to Miles? All right,
Oh
Miles, we'll
no,
turn
I,
it
I
over to
sorry, I
you.
couldn't get my mute off quick enough. Make sure you send your students our way. I remember last year a conversation where I answered a question from a parent who said, my student has been in to see advising and they can't get an internship. They're struggling to find opportunities. Um, your students may not be giving you all the details. It was probably their academic advisor. They met with me for the first time and had a very successful year following our interaction, mostly because of cleaning up resume and cover letter and some of the things they weren't doing as well as they could. So please tell them not to delay coming in to meet with us as soon as they can. Makes really good sense. So much we can talk about and things we can get started on early.
If your student is a first year student, we love it when they come in, right? Because we can give them this overview. We can start the conversation if that's where they are at that moment. But yeah, the earlier in their university career they come in, then we can kind of move forward and meet with them fairly frequently, as they
Never too
need it
early.
to help
Never
them.
too early.
Yeah, exactly. So
All right, Brian, David, Andrea, thank you so much for the amazing presentation and answering lots of questions. We appreciate everyone who attended tonight's Eagle Families webinar, and you can look online for our future webinars. With that, thank you so much for attending tonight and have a good night.